Have you ever stopped to think about why our societies are set up the way they are? It's really not an accident. It's actually the result of this single epic story, a great conversation that's been going on for over 2,500 years. So today, let's try to map that conversation out.
Okay, let's just dive right in with the most fundamental question in all of politics. Who gets to make the rules, right? Is it a king? Is it the people? Maybe some kind of expert? This one question really is the engine that drives our entire story.
And for millennia, the sharpest thinkers in history have been wrestling with this. They've been building on, arguing with, and sometimes just completely demolishing the ideas of everyone who came before them. So you see, this isn't just some boring list of names. It's a real, live debate that's been raging across the centuries.
And just look at this lineup. It's like a relay race of geniuses. You start with Confucius and Plato way back in the ancient world, and you go all the way up to someone like Rawls in the 20th century. Each one of these thinkers grabbed the baton, ran with it, and pushed the whole conversation into a brand new direction.
So let's start where it all began, with the original architects, the ones who laid the very foundations for all of Western political thought.
Now, for these early thinkers, the goal wasn't just to describe the world as it was. No, they were on a quest for perfection. Their big question was all about virtue, about order, and about designing the perfect form of government right from the ground up.
And this slide really nails the incredible difference between the teacher and his student. On one hand, you've got Plato, who was the ultimate idealist. He believed there was this higher reality of perfect forms, and he thought the state should be run by these super-wise philosopher kings who could see that truth. But then his student Aristotle, well, he was a biologist at heart, a total pragmatist. He looked at the world as it actually was, studying hundreds of real governments to figure out what worked. And his conclusion? A balanced, constitutional government that followed the rule of law.
Okay, so after the ancient world, the conversation kind of went quiet for centuries during the Middle Ages. But when it roared back to life in the Renaissance, the central question had totally changed. This is what we call the modern shift.
The focus moves from the ideal state to the real one. Thinkers became obsessed with this new puzzle. Where does a ruler's authority actually come from? Is it from God? Is it just brute force? Or does it come from us?
And nobody ripped politics away from traditional morality quite like Niccolò Machiavelli. He looked at power with just cold, hard realism. For him, politics wasn't about what should be, it was about what a ruler has to do to stay in control. This was a massive, seismic shift in thinking.
This new focus on power and where it comes from gave birth to one of the most influential ideas in history, the social contract. The basic idea is pretty simple. Government isn't some divine thing handed down from on high. It's a deal. We, the people, agree to give up a little bit of our freedom in exchange for security and protection from the state.
But here's the thing. Everyone had a totally different idea of what that deal should look like, because they all had different ideas about human nature itself. Thomas Hobbes, who was writing during a really brutal civil war, thought life without a strong ruler was just chaos. So he argued for an absolute monarch. John Locke? He saw things differently. He thought people were rational and had natural rights to life, liberty, and property. Sound familiar? His ideas were a direct inspiration for the American Declaration of Independence. And then you have Rousseau, who came along and said, we're all born as noble savages, but get corrupted by society. For him, real freedom meant a direct democracy that follows the general will. You know, what's best for everyone as a whole?
So, the ideas of the social contract, they weren't just academic. They lit the fuse for actual revolutions. But those revolutions created their own new problems and new critiques, which brings us to the explosive 19th century, the age of ideology.
Thinkers started fine-tuning and challenging everything that came before. You had John Stuart Mill, who worried that democracy could just crush the individual, so he became this passionate defender of free speech. Then you have Mary Wollstonecraft, who pointed out this huge blind spot in the whole conversation. Women, they'd been completely left out of the social contract. And then there's George Hegel, who saw it all as one big, unfolding story, this epic march of the human spirit toward freedom.
But then, a thinker comes along who looks at Hegel's grand story of ideas and just flips it completely on its head. Karl Marx argued that the real engine of history wasn't ideas at all, it was economics.
And this is absolutely crucial. Marx completely reframed the debate. It wasn't just about rights or contracts anymore. To Marx, all that was basically a smokescreen, hiding the real power dynamic, the struggle between economic classes.
This new way of looking at the world, through the lens of inequality and economics, would dominate political debates for the next century and a half.
And that brings us to the 20th century. I mean, what a turbulent time. A century of world wars, incredible new technology, the rise and fall of empires, and political horrors on a scale never seen before. It all demanded brand new answers.
So thinkers were forced to grapple with these terrifying new realities. You had Hannah Arendt, who studied the rise of Nazism and Stalinism to try and understand the unique evil of totalitarianism. Frantz Fanon exposed the deep psychological wounds that colonialism inflicted on everyone involved. Mao Zedong took Marxist theory and reshaped it to ignite a peasant-led revolution in China. And after all of that, John Rawls tried to bring the conversation back to justice, asking us to imagine designing a fair society from behind a veil of ignorance, where we don't know what our own position in that society will be.
So, after that whirlwind tour through 2,500 years of thought, where does that leave us? Let's try to pull it all together.
You can really see the whole journey laid out here. The great conversation started with a focus on virtue. Then it shifted to the defense of individual rights. After that, it was challenged by a focus on economic structures. And in the last century, it expanded to include these really complex questions of identity and power. Each step built on and was a reaction to the one before it.
And maybe the most important takeaway here is this. These aren't just dusty ideas in some old textbook. Every single debate we have today about freedom, justice, equality, power, it's all a continuation of this very same conversation.
So I'll just leave you with this. Plato and Locke and Marx and Arendt, they all had their turn. Now the baton is being passed to us. When you look at the world today, what's the next great question that you think we need to answer to keep this conversation moving forward?